The Legend of Zelda has a minor history with multiplayer. Across the mainline titles, 4 games have the option to play with others. Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks each have side games that even allowed online play, but they aren't exactly in-depth, and most players have forgotten them. There is also the original Four Swords and Four Swords Adventures, both with full local multiplayer in a much more in-depth style, but they are hindered by their requirements. Four Swords needs you to have 4 copies of the game, 4 GBAs, and a link cable. And Four Swords Adventures, you need 4 GBA systems, a GameCube, 4 GBA to GameCube link cables, and of course, a copy of the game itself. All of this runs up a rather hefty bill to play either game multiplayer. However, at E3 2015, it looked like we might finally get a more accessible multiplayer Zelda. A new 3-player title was announced with full online play, seemingly no ridiculous requirements to play with others, and all running on the Link Between Worlds engine. It looked fun and was released on a popular console, and yet, this is one of the most forgotten about and disliked games in the franchise, and one of the worst selling too. Which is a shame, because it's absolutely fantastic to play with friends. This time I jump into a world of pure style with The Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes. Hello everyone and welcome to the Pixel Tavern. If you're new here, then thank you for checking out the channel. Please leave any comments and subscribe if you enjoy the video. And if you've been here before, then thank you for continuing to support me in this channel. This time I'm on to the 18th game in the series with The Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes. It's a game that on paper sounded perfect, but in reality is mostly forgotten about. In my opinion, it's a multiplayer delight, but also it's a single-player nightmare. As usual, there are full spoilers ahead. The Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes first released on 22nd of October 2015 in Japan, and within 2 days everywhere else. No special editions this time, but there was a minor pre-order bonus of a pin set for some stores. Sadly, as mentioned in my last video though, it is one of 3 Zelda titles still locked to one system, and it's likely to stay that way forever due to its lack of popularity and low sales. Well, at least in terms of the Zelda franchise. It's still sold over 1 million copies. Story-wise, it's set shortly after the events of A Link Between Worlds, where Link has travelled to a new town called Hytopia, a vista of high fashion and style. Its princess, named Styla, is the most fashionable in the land. That is until the Witch of the Drablands, Lady Maud, decides she's had enough of Styla being the princess of fashion. She sends her a cursed and ugly one-piece jumpsuit that cannot be removed. Her father, King Tuft, calls for the aid of heroes, and coincidentally believes in the legend of the Triforce Heroes, 3 knights with pointy ears, sideburns, and side-parted hair. Sound familiar? Well, you can probably guess where this goes from here. Link enters the town of Hytopia and is immediately snapped up for duty and thrown into the Drablands to return style to the people and its princess. As the title suggests though, Link is not alone this time, at least sort of. The story never really makes it clear if this is 3 different Links, the same Link split 3 times, or something else. That's mostly because the story here is more for comedic value and to give a basic premise to the gameplay than to provide anything in depth. Speaking of that gameplay, this time it has 2 core pillars. The first is your usual top-down Zelda affair. This plays pretty much like A Link Between Worlds, with the same speedy movement, fun puzzles, most of which being centered around 3 links, and satisfyingly energetic combat, with many enemies requiring you to utilize all 3 links to defeat them. The campaign is separated out into 8 areas, with 4 levels each, and with those each containing 4 parts to fight and puzzle your way through. Each level also has a lot of replay value thanks to the multiple mission types when you replay them, such as popping balloons as you go through the level, completing it in an allotted time, and several more. There is also a bonus 9th area which was added in a free update after release that gives you some extra difficult levels with some fiendish puzzles and boss fights. In the same style as the Four Swords games, you can only carry 1 item per link at a time, and you must frequently swap to new ones as you traverse the levels. Sadly, there is nothing unique here, which is a shame, because something requiring all 3 links could have been fun to use. Instead, we have the usual selection of bombs, bows, boomerangs and more that we have seen before. They are all great fun to use though, and most of them have fun interactions between the links, such as using the boomerang to help others cross gaps that they have recently thrown you over. Outside of that core gameplay is the second pillar, fashion. Between levels, you can switch the costume of Link to a wide selection of others, all utilizing fun, useful, or sometimes even debilitating powers. One thing they all have in common though, is they add a level of hilarity that had not been seen in the Zelda series before. Every costume is goofy, fun, and becomes a key reason to replay levels, as whenever you complete a level, whether on a normal run-through or a side mission, you will be rewarded with an item. You then use those items to unlock costumes. The pace at which you obtain them though is sadly too slow, as you need to repeat levels to get the items you need, or get an abundance of rupees to buy them. Some also require you to play with multiple new players to get friend tokens, but this is only possible via local play. After you complete the game, you can get those coins more easily, but it still doesn't make costumes much quicker to earn. Still, the overall system works well and is pretty fun, if a little long-winded to actually earn them. So, you might be thinking, this all sounds great, and you're wondering why this game isn't more popular. Well, that's because of 3 key reasons. 1. Although the multiplayer is great, it was incredibly unreliable and restrictive for several years after its launch. You could very easily lose connection or have horrendous lag ruin your game at any time. Number 2. You could only play with people in the same global region. Have friends outside your region or just want to play with a large pool of random players? Tough. Due to very weirdly applying server region locking to online, and even local play, you can only play with others who have the same regional version of Triforce Heroes as you. And number 3, it can only really be played by 3 players. Want to play 2 players? No dice. There is no option for that. And single player? Well, let me ask you. Do you like suffering? Because that's what single player is. This is the first time in the entire Zelda series that I felt Nintendo screwed up big time. Triforce Heroes was always advertised as a multiplayer game, and was heavily encouraged as one. But it was made clear that you could play it single player as well. Well, frankly, this is a borderline lie. In Four Swords Adventures, if you played alone, you controlled all 4 links in a group, and you could separate them out when a specific puzzle required it. But 99% of the time you would move all 4 around and change your forms in order to tackle puzzles and enemies. The original 4 Swords on GBA sadly didn't do this, and could only be played by at least 2 players. But the anniversary version of the game fixed this, and used a similar solution as Four Swords Adventures for its single player mode. All 3 of these games came out years before Triforce Heroes, so surely it would use a good system, right? Sadly though, that's very wrong. It doesn't use a system at all. When you play by yourself, you still have to utilize and control all 3 links. But you have to do it by either constantly carrying the other 2 in the usually fun mechanic of the totem formation, or you have to switch between each link to move them around individually. This is tedious, boring, and most importantly, it absolutely destroys the pacing of the gameplay. And it even makes some of the side missions practically impossible to complete. It also increases the difficulty astronomically, and not in a fun way. Boss fights and enemies become horrible to battle, as you have to constantly swap between or grab the other links to fight them, and all fun is completely sucked out of the gameplay because of it. Despite attempting to play through this single player over the past 9 years, I never stuck with it long enough to even complete the first area. I know the advertising campaign made it clear that this was best experienced multiplayer, but the single player should simply not have been this poor. Genuinely, if you can only play this single player, it is by far the worst game in the series, and I would not recommend anyone to play it. However, if you have friends, family, or enemies who might like to play some Zelda with you, then prepare for one of the best multiplayer experiences out there. Now, I didn't have anyone who met such criteria. Lots of enemies, but none who wanted to play Zelda multiplayer with me, which incidentally is probably why they're my enemies. So, via the power of the internet and the promise to stop sending him threatening letters, I found someone to play through the whole game with me, finally allowing me to say I have completed every single mainline Zelda game. Please welcome back to the channel, Zerbraxi. Zerbraxi? Hey, Zerbraxi!
Oh, jeez. God, you can't be doing that. You gotta tell me before you're gonna cut to me unexpectedly like that, dude. Like, what if I was doing something embarrassing? Like, what if I was playing the Wii U or something?
Haha, yeah, of course. Who would like playing a Wii U? Certainly not me, with its small but fun and unique library of games like Nintendo Land here. But anyway, that is not the point. I keep telling you, I am not God. I'm You know what? Forget it. Do you want to play Triforce Heroes with me?
Actually, I'm kind of in the middle of something right now. I'm really, really busy. I'm currently trying to complain about games that are totally fine while defending games that totally suck. See, I'm trying to give this whole new contrarian thing a try.
Ah, well, a pretty standard day for you then, Zerbraxi. Well, let me ask you this. If you had the option to use pom-poms for the whole video, would it convince you to play?
Will my mom see this?
I personally will take it upon myself to make sure that she probably won't not see it.
I'm in.
Ah, good. He didn't catch the double negative. Well, great. Grab your pom-poms and your 3DS too, because it's time to dive into Triforce Heroes multiplayer. This game completely changes when you're playing with others. Playing with randoms online is somewhat fun, but you can't communicate easily or reliably with them. But with two friends who you can fully communicate with at all times, the game turns into a strategic and chaotic delight to play. Combat becomes frantically fun as you all run around either communicating smoothly to take down a boss or enemies, utilizing your totem ability to take on the high up ones, or you can do what would occasionally happen for us, run around screaming, panicking, and accidentally throwing each other off of ledges. The competitive element of the previous multiplayer Zeldas is now relegated to a fun side mode, which we'll discuss more later. So you all have to work together to get extra rupees and reach the goal. Zerbraxi, what were your thoughts on the core gameplay when we played multiplayer? And did you manage to try out the hell that is the single player?
Of course I tried the single player. An opportunity to engage in an activity that would make chewing glass seem like a fun evening? I wouldn't miss that for the world.
Wait, whoa. So you enjoy that type of thing?
It's more like I played it for the first couple of stages out of morbid curiosity, but I legitimately have more fun playing Shaq Fu than Triforce Heroes single player. Really not joking. It's impressively terrible. I didn't think Nintendo knew how to make something so glaringly broken by design. This is how a lot of people I know first experienced the game, and their first-hand accounts of this is why it took me 8 years to even turn the game on. Give me for a second though, real talk, between you and me. If you don't have any friends, like, don't worry, me neither. But just hit me up on Discord, maybe we can chat about Triforce Heroes or something. But seriously, if you don't have any friends, and you're trying to play through every single Zelda game like God over here, and you get to Triforce Heroes, just lie. Just skip it. Just cross it off the list, and totally tell everybody you played it. Honestly, I won't tell if you don't tell. Like, I'll vouch for you. But the multiplayer, on the other hand, why did no one tell me it was this good? I honestly think this might be one of the most creative puzzle designs across all of the multiplayer Zeldas. The amount of aha moments that we all had was priceless. I don't think it necessarily rivals the best dungeon design spanning the entire series, but the variety of obstacles really calls out different ways of problem solving. It never seemed like a single one of us was solving most puzzles, but more like player 1 seemed best at figuring out how to use items to traverse through a problem, and player 2 was best at figuring out the right items and angle of attack to overcome the surprisingly fun bosses, and player 3 was better at the more landscape and environmental puzzle design.
Whoa, Zerbraxi, whoa. We don't talk about player 3. You know it's forbidden.
Oh, come on, but look, they're so cute.
Zerbraxi, don't forget the contract they made us sign. They will take our kidneys.
Okay, fine, alright. Well, then to continue my hour-long rants that I'm known for. In other multiplayer Zelda adventures, it was very possible for a single individual to completely carry the team in conquering tough challenges. In Triforce Heroes, most of the challenging elements genuinely require all 3 players to communicate and execute certain tasks in unison. You'll have those moments here and there where you get stuck trying to get everyone to perfectly perform their respective roles, but when it clicks, when it does, it almost feels like that feeling of overcoming a raid boss in an MMO. That moment of excitement when everything really lands, that trial and error of finding who's best to do which part of the puzzle, who should have what item, and what costume each person should be wearing.
Oh, agreed. It really forces you to work together, even to the point of literally not letting you finish any area until all players are present. This is 100% a compliment though. It's a multiplayer game that just begs to be played in a group with friends. Just because the requirements are somewhat specific doesn't mean it's not fun. Which of course, the same thing can be said about the previous multiplayer titles as well. This is mostly due to communication being key to the gameplay. which ultimately is why it doesn't work particularly well with randoms online. At any time, I could ask Zerbraxi or our unnamed third player to back me up in a fight, or work with me to tackle a puzzle. With randoms online, the best you get is the option to spam little emotes on the bottom screen. Now, don't get me wrong, these are adorable, and we did that anyway, but they don't give you the level of communication you need to have the best experience. You mentioned the costumes as well. I feel they are a great reward for playing, with a large selection of them too, ranging from Zora and Tingle costumes to a Power Rangers inspired suit. There's also an 8-bit style tunic that makes all of the music 8-bit as well. There's a Medusa themed one, robots, ninjas, Linebeck, a sexy cheetah costume Link, and of course, Zerbraxi's favourite, the cheerleader costume. There is even a fierce deity armor you can unlock for completing the free DLC area, which was brutally difficult throughout. It's great fun to play though, as it puts everything you learned in the campaign to the test, and makes sure that all players involved have to be at their best. So what's your thoughts on the costumes, Zerbraxi?
My thoughts. Give me an M, give me a Y, give me a T, give me an H, give me a O, give me a... How do you spell thoughts?
Zerbraxi, I appreciate the effort you're going to communicate via one letter at a time, but I think you might need to use your words here.
Look, Cheerleader Link is best Link. Nothing can stop the cheer. I think the best part about the costumes is how they serve very specific roles, and the level and puzzle design of each area really helps their respective strengths really shine. Like, for myself, I ended up playing a ton of more support outfits, like the cheerleader, which provides extra magic meter for the party. I also really liked the legendary dress, which provided more hearts from jars and enemies. Basically, I really liked the girl outfits is what I'm getting at. Triforce Heroes really put me in touch with my feminine side.
To be fair, no one can deny that you are absolutely rocking the pom-poms. While Zerbraxi took care of the support outfits, I would normally take some attack-heavy suits, such as the Big Bomb outfit to create ludicrously big explosions, or the Sword suit to fire sword beams. There are also individually passive ability suits, such as the Sora suit for faster swimming, or the Goron suit to avoid damage from fire, or even lava. All the different suit types really give variety to the gameplay across each individual player to create a unique experience every time. A lot of thought appears to have been put into their fantastic design both visually and mechanically.
I love how well it worked out to have someone fill into the more support outfits, and then to have, like you, a lot more in the offensive costumes, or like how player 3 wore the bare minimum costume because they thought it was cute, only for us to find out that it basically turns the game into hard mode. Or how much they love the Kokiri outfit, turning the bow into a triple-shot fiend, or...
Contract, Zerbraxi, contract. Kidneys. Kidneys.
Oh yeah, sorry, that's right. There is no player 3 in Hytopia Kingdom. One criticism I had about Zelda for decades was that tunics really weren't exciting. Their powers were often relegated to stat increases or functionality that served a single purpose in like 1 or 2 parts of the game. In fact, watching your series about all these Zelda games has really kind of validated that opinion of mine. Zelda items have always been incredibly creative and interesting, but tunics almost never. It excited me so much that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom really turned tunics into more of like real RPG equipment slots that required the player to think about their choices. Both of those games turned tunics into real choice into preparing for your adventure. I gotta give Triforce Heroes huge props for starting this transition 2 years before Breath of the Wild was even released. Every level we delved into was started with a conversation of who would be wearing what and why. It was genuinely collaborative and fun. Alright, so I've already admitted that I like dresses and pom-poms, but how about you?
I would have to say my favourite one visually is the Linebeck costume, as Link even gets a little moustache. Or maybe the ninja one, as it reminds me of Naruto. Or maybe the energy gear, because it also somewhat reminds me of Naruto. I may have watched all of Naruto recently. Can you tell? Then again, there is the Fireblazer costume that kind of looks like Link is imitating Elton John. There are so many good ones to pick from that I honestly can't decide. Unlocking these costumes gave me the extra drive to play through the campaign and at least some of the side missions. Not that I even needed that extra drive though, as this is genuinely some of the most fun I've had with a multiplayer game. Zerbraxi's point about the costumes being a new creative venue for Zelda is a very good one. As he said, this carries over into Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, but it has even carried on into Echoes of Wisdom, with multiple costumes in that as well. The two 3DS titles have definitely influenced modern Zelda games on a scale most people probably don't realize. It's just a shame it takes so long to unlock a lot of these outfits.
You know, I remember us talking about this a lot while playing. The pacing is a little slow in terms of getting each costume. Some work out relatively well, but considering rewards in areas are semi-random, you can get super unlucky and need to repeat a level quite a few times before getting that one particular component to go make the outfit you really want. However, the flip side is this might be one of the only times rupees actually matters, as they are quite a valuable resource in and of themselves. Also though, that grind for materials and to unlock the armor sets, it really reminded me of Monster Hunter. That hunt to go back into certain areas to get some extra materials to craft a very specific armor set for a very specific purpose in order to increase your available loadout is a gameplay loop that I am such a sucker for.
I love Monster Hunter as well, but getting the specific parts I can find to be a massive grind. I didn't find it too bad here though. At least you can unlock free items every day from the treasure chest house and use rupees to buy the items as they appear in the merchant store. But I wish you obtained them quicker from playing levels, as although they are fun, I don't want to have to repeat them over and over again to get the best experience.
I have to echo something you said. This was one of the most fun multiplayer experiences I've had. Honestly, I've probably played more multiplayer hours than time spent in any other hobby I've ever had, and these weekly sessions were such a good time. There's a lot to appreciate about decompressing after a busy week into an activity that's new, but also warm and comfortable. That's actually a pretty good summation for how I feel about the combat as a whole, actually. In a way, it's basically the Link Between Worlds gameplay feel, and that's fine. Oh, and since I was given some editing access to your script, let me, let's see here. Just gonna go ahead and hijack this real quick and ask, how freaking awesome is A Link Between Worlds, by the way, huh? I thought I was gonna hate that game when it was first announced. I mean, like, seriously, the balls to make a sequel to A Link to the frickin' Past? Really? Really? And then to add some stupid paint gimmick? Like, are you kidding me? That was the best thing you could think of? And then to make potentially one of the best games in the entire series? Hot damn, alright, yeah, prove me wrong. Sit me down, put a Wii U in front of my hand. I legit think it's the most underappreciated game in the entire franchise. It's so good.
Oh, Link Between Worlds is undeniably amazing. It took me a long time to replay it, but I think it might just be the best top-down Zelda title, with Spirit Tracks either being alongside it or a close second. But anyway, Zerbraxi, I did a whole video on A Link Between Worlds. Triforce Heroes?
Yeah, what about it?
That's what the whole video's about?
Oh yeah, well, something A Link Between Worlds doesn't have is the impressively creative item variety in Triforce Heroes. Yeah, the game feel itself is identical to the previous 3DS title, but the way the items interact with the environment, interact with your friends, and with the enemies is genuinely fun and creative. Helping, or killing, a friend across a gap with the boomerang is quick, it's snappy, and it makes it all the more satisfying dropping someone off a cliff and claiming that it was totally a mistake. My bad.
The creativity doesn't end there either. It also extends to the boss fights. The final fight with Lady Maud is probably the highlight. With its brutal but fair difficulty, it requires you to avoid the umbrella attacks that come thick and fast. You also have to use the totem ability to stack you and your team up to get to her level and take her down. It's frantic and punishing, but a lot of fun. The same goes for pretty much all of the boss fights. The visual designs are similar to that of A Link Between Worlds, but they are mostly original in each of their designs. Each one requires you and your team to work together, and since you all share one set of hearts, your combat and dodging skills need to be on point to not drag the rest of the team down. It all extends to the mini-bosses as well, with the highlight for me being a minecart battle against two Hinoxes, frantically throwing bombs back and forth as the minecart circles the arena. I can't remember a single boss being bad or boring throughout the whole campaign.
Triforce Heroes still likes to tickle your brain with some challenging moments like the final boss, but in typical Zelda fashion, it always feels fair and calculated, so you never end up getting that classic multiplayer rage. Oh no, that wasn't multiplayer rage. That was because of how stupidly difficult it is to play with your friends.
Yeah, this is one of those Nintendo quirks this game has. As I mentioned before, it has region locking. And with me and Zerbraxi being, say, 3,222.8 miles apart, we do happen to be in different regions. So it's a good thing dedicated fans post a lot of help online so that we could connect with hacked systems. We played this right before the Nintendo Online service shut down for the 3DS in April 2024. And annoyingly, right before we realized it would have been much easier with the Pretendo network, which circumvents the region locking. But either way, we got there, and the online experience ran
surprisingly really well.
Yeah, I'm as shocked as you are. We had very little lag and in most cases, none at all. And only once or twice did we really have full-on connection issues. I'm guessing this is because internet speeds are faster and more reliable than they were a decade ago. But considering this still varies from person to person and region to region, I just have one question.
Why the hell was this region locked? What Godphil said earlier is genuine. Playing together would have been so much easier if we just joined the fan-made Pretendo network. This is yet another case where emulation and preservation saves the day. And not only is this service keeping the 3DS and Wii U networks alive, but it also comes with features and perks that the official online network didn't have, like a lack of region locking.
Pretendo even works on original hardware as well, and it's very easy to get set up. I really wish we thought of trying it in the first place.
What Nintendo did here was create a Zelda game with a functionally unplayable single-player mode, but they decided to construct a seriously unnecessary blocker that restricts multiplayer in a game where playing with others is basically the only way to play.
Yeah, honestly, I get the feeling that they only tested this game in multiplayer and only locally. The single player is basically unplayable, and they must have just assumed the multiplayer wouldn't work well across regions, as I imagine 2015 internet speeds would have still been fine for most people. It is great to see some Zelda games getting modern remasters and remakes, but I would love to see Triforce Heroes make a comeback too, mostly as a sequel, as multiplayer Zelda, especially in this format, is so much fun to play, and it would be great to see what the team at Nintendo and Grezzo could come up with next. I suppose there's just one more mode to cover, and that is, what if you decide that co-op gameplay is just not on the cards for you that day, and instead, violence is the only answer? Well, lucky for us, the developers included a battle mode. It's not particularly in-depth or anything, but it is great fun to have as a side mode to get rid of all this wholesome, cooperative friendliness. 3 links enter, and funnily enough, 3 links also leave, as it's a deathmatch, not an elimination mode. You get as many kills as you can, and avoid being killed yourself to win.
Quite honestly, I don't think I've ever felt more connected to my friends than when I attempt to blow them up in an arena. Sometimes the only way I feel comfortable expressing my affection is by shooting a bow and arrow from off-screen and letting whatever happens, happen. I don't think there's a ton necessarily about the arena that's all that exciting. I mean, it's kind of fun and competition is always a good time, but it's also pretty bare bones. If it wasn't for the rewards and the absurdity of the costume powers being used on each other, I don't think there'd be too much to say. Killing your friends is always fun, and being killed by your friends...
Ah! Yeah, I threw that into a pillow. I'm not going to break one of these things. They cost a fortune and I'm not monetized yet. Yeah, I have a feeling Player 3 kind of destroyed us a bit, which is also why we had to sign that stupid kidney contract. But anyway, we must also mention the presentation. Graphically, it's identical to A Link Between Worlds, but thankfully, as with that game, a lot of care and attention was put into everything. The environments range across fairly standard Zelda affairs, with lava, snow, forest and desert areas all making an appearance. But each area still feels uniquely its own, and I didn't really feel any repetition of the designs across each area. The visual creativity also spreads to the enemy and boss design as well, especially the spectacle that is the final fight with Lady Maud, showcasing a level of bright colours and extravagance not seen in many other Zelda games.
Honestly, visually, the only thing I really remember is that it looks like A Link Between Worlds, which is fine. It works perfectly, and the style is pretty and clean already. I do wish the level design delved into weirder aesthetics though. For a game focused entirely around fashion culture, It's basically on the final level and boss that drives that theming home. It's a shame because that last section is genuinely so good, but everything else is your kind of typical affair, as you mentioned. What a missed opportunity, you know? Like, have the enemies get caught off guard in a dressing room as we sneak up on them. Have levels take place in a more medieval parody of a modern-day corporate office of a fashion company, or like a mall. I just think if you're gonna go and make so much of the dialogue focus so hard on this world of beauty and glamour, then the aesthetics of the stages should amplify that in some way, instead of just being more Zelda, so to speak. Oh, and the music, by the way, is... well... I actually don't remember too much, do you?
So weirdly, neither do I, but I have realised why. It's because we were always chatting throughout our playthrough. So until I wrote this section, I didn't really remember anything spectacular. However, as I normally do with my music sections, I am writing this while listening to the soundtrack. Ryo Nagamatsu, the composer of A Link Between Worlds, returns for this soundtrack. And once again, it's really impressive, with lots of original tracks using instruments not heard before in the series. A really good detail is that the music dynamically changes for each individual player. For example, when you use the totem formation, the music is different for each player depending on where they are in the form. And it's different again if you use the 8-bit tunic as well, as that changes all of the music. Overall, I wouldn't say it's quite as good as A Link Between Worlds soundtrack, but it's still really good. If you talk as much as we did during this playthrough though, you probably won't realise how good it is either. There is also a little mini-game in the lobby area before you choose a stage that has a ball that you can hit around between the three of you. It will play a unique version of a random song from Zelda's history as you hit it around, and it will speed up the longer you can keep it from hitting the ground.
Oh yeah, I mean, that was actually pretty fun. Personally, for me, outside the Hytopia theme, I don't think I actually remember much. I do remember how often I heard fiddles get used in tracks though, and that makes me incredibly happy. I have no idea why, but I have a soft spot for the sound of a fiddle. Oh, there is one thing I remember thinking was pretty clever. I love how when you're in the store to look at new costumes, the music would slightly shift when you were looking at the mirror. It was almost as if it got more cheery and hyped up for you as you prepared to embark on a new journey. Okay, actually, fine, the shop theme in general is pretty awesome now that I'm thinking about it. I thought I had forgotten about it, but yeah, it all kind of came rushing back. All in all, I have to say a huge thank you for inviting me to play through this. This has been a blind spot for me in terms of Zelda games, and it's pretty nice to finally have it wrapped up and completed. And also, by the way, the fact that we had this become like a weekly thing every weekend where the three of us would play together, that was pretty fun. And it was so much fun that I actually kind of did that with my friends now, where every weekend we play some multiplayer game together. But this, wow, what a pleasant surprise this really was. When I was ranting earlier about A Link Between Worlds, I said then that I thought that game was the most underappreciated series in the franchise, but I don't know, man. I do think A Link Between Worlds doesn't get enough love and deserves far more attention, but this? Triforce Heroes actually might be the most underrated Zelda game in the franchise. It's so good! If you still have a 3DS, grab yourself a copy, get Pretendo set up, and play it with some friends. Heck, make a weekly thing out of it to complete. The creativity and gameplay loop are so unique to this title specifically. It was kinda sent out to die with all that weird Nintendo stuff that Nintendo does, but years later, it's still a blast. Just don't play it single player is all. You don't have to do that to yourself.
I'm so glad we finally got to play through this, and honestly, it was one of the best multiplayer experiences I've ever had. Thank you, Zerbraxi, for joining me on this manic quest through the world of Hytopia. And of course to our mystery third player too, who we must never speak of again. If you haven't already, make sure to go check out Zerbraxi's channel. He has great videos over there about dozens of video games and perspectives. He's particularly nerdy about his old school RPGs as well, a genre I know basically nothing about. And he sure knows how to rant like the best of them. We've appeared on each other's channels a few times now, and it's always great fun when we do. Please go check out his channel. And there you have it, the last multiplayer game in the series for nearly a decade. It was the only game I hadn't completed other than Zelda 2 when I started making this series. After all these years of thinking this game would be great played through with friends, I can finally confirm that is indeed the case. I can't think of any other multiplayer experience like this. I really do hope we get a continuation of the multiplayer Zelda games in the future. It's a side of the franchise that is woefully forgotten about most of the time, but I feel with the right care and attention, it's a side that could really flourish into something spectacular. In the next video though, I move on to a new age of Zelda. Just like Ocarina of Time, it would go on to influence not only the series, but video games in general. Join me next time in the wilds for
The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild, a game that revolutionized the franchise and became the best-selling game in the series with over 33 million copies sold.
Hey, wait a minute. Did I put you down to read out this part of the script? Normally I do this.
Yeah, it's in bold, so it seems so.
Huh, so I did. Well, you're halfway through it now. You may as well finish it up.
This is the game that would change the franchise forever. Phil will catch you next time for Breath of the Wild.
Thank you very much for watching. My name's Phil, and I'm the creator of the Pixel Tavern. A big thank you once again to Zerbraxi and our mystery third player for playing through all of Triforce Heroes with me. It is something that I've wanted to do for nearly a decade, and it was amazing to finally play through it with such great people. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the Pixel Tavern and click the bell icon to stay notified of any future videos. Also do the same with Zerbraxi's channel too, which I will link in the description, and it will be on screen in a moment too, provided YouTube hasn't changed its settings again. Please also leave a comment with your thoughts on Triforce Heroes. Did you manage to play it all the way through with friends, with randoms, or alone? Mercy on your soul if you managed to do it alone. Would you want another multiplayer title in the future? And of course, what is your favourite costume? Until the next video though everyone, thank you very much for watching.